The 4-hour work week. Sounds pretty radical, don't you think? At least that's what I thought when I first bought this book. But it did make me curious. I really wanted to find out what was behind all of this. How could someone possibly work just 4 hours a week and still make a living and be happy? And later on, I found out from one of Tim Ferriss's podcasts that when he said the 4-hour work week, he didn't literally mean 4 hours, and that clarifies things. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if it's 4 hours, 8 hours, 10 or 12 hours. As long as it's significantly below the regular 35-hour work week, I'm all for it. So this is where I was at when I first got this book. I was in a situation where money and passion weren't aligned at all. And I know that there are problems with the phrase follow your passion. But back then I was in a place where I was so far off from what I really wanted to do. And perhaps, just perhaps, you watching right now are also in this kind of situation where you're earning money doing one thing, but all the time you're thinking about doing something completely different. If this is you, then let me know by hitting the like button. I always knew back then that I wanted to do something more creative, although I didn't really have the clarity about what it was exactly that I wanted to do. But I never had the time or the energy to plan my career change or even just think about what I wanted to do next. My job, the one that I hated, took me around 60 hours if I count in the time that it took me to get to work and back from work. If I had only taken this book a bit more seriously back then, I think that my career would have changed for the better much earlier. And what I want to share with you today is something that's actually so simple. But the thing is that oftentimes simple things are really hard to absorb. Or perhaps that's just me because I was really stubborn back then. And because I know that this really has the potential to change your career for the better, I feel that it's really important that I share with you this one thing that I learned from this book. I mean, there were a lot of good things that I learned from this book, but there was one thing that I found most impactful, at least when it came to my own career. And it has all to do with the amount of money that you earn in relation to the time and especially the energy that it takes you. And I'll explain more in a bit. In my early career, all that I cared about was how much my salary was. And in most parts of the world, that is expressed in salary per year. So each time I would get a promotion and a raise, all that I focused on was that my salary increased from this amount to that amount. But the problem with this was that I never really took into account how many more hours I would need to work and how much more energy this new position would absorb. And believe me, as I made my way up, so did the number of hours that I worked increase. And although it says in the contract 40 hours per week, you know that it's not true. I mean, there are always exceptions, but many people end up working more than the 40 hours stated in their contract. There's the time that you need to go to work and back from work, and the farther away your workplace is, the higher the cost for you will be, at least pre-COVID. Now it's a bit different with the remote working situation. But then there's also the time that you need to prepare yourself and get yourself set up to start working. And the higher and higher you climb up the ladder, the more responsibilities you have and the more attention the job demands from you overall. And if you ever got an email from your boss outside of working hours, let's say at 4 a.m. in the morning, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. So pretty quick, I got to 60 hours of work per week. I don't know if you watching right now are in the midst of climbing up the corporate ladder or if you just started your career. The point is that if you like and truly enjoy where you are, then it's all good. But if you don't like it, then be really careful, because if you don't just stop for a second, take the time to take stock and review of where you're at and where you're heading, then in a few years you might just be surprised about where you find yourself. So the crucial thing that I learned from the 4-hour work week is that it's important not to only look at your absolute salary or absolute income, but rather your relative income. Let's say that your salary increases by 20%, and that may seem like a lot, and it is in absolute terms. But then go on to the next step and see how much more time, how much more energy you spend doing that job. If your salary increases by 20%, does the time and energy you spend also only increase by 20% or rather 30%? So even though your salary increases, but the amount of time and energy you spend on it increases over proportionally, then in relative terms, your income has actually decreased. By the way, if you like this video so far, then please let me know by hitting the like button. And also, if you want to get more videos like this, then you might consider subscribing. And to all my dear subscribers out there, in case you haven't done this, please do me a favor and go down to the notifications and make sure that it's set to all notifications so that you won't miss a video from me. So what to make of all of this? Not accept a promotion or not accept a salary increase? Of course not. That would be ridiculous. But what Tim Ferris is saying in the 4-Hour Workweek is that there are alternatives. There is the option to work fewer hours. But how do you possibly do this while still earning a proper living? And the answer is to get work or do the kind of work where you are not paid based on hours, but based on results. See, it's so simple. It's so simple, but it took me personally such a long time to really understand this concept. And once I understood it, it was so liberating. So I thought to myself, well, this makes sense. If I can work more efficiently and still deliver a high quality outcome, then why do I need to get paid by the hour? Here's a simple example. If someone pays me $1,000 to make a product and I spend 50 hours making that product, then that means that I effectively earn $20 per hour. But let's say that the person still pays me $1,000 for that product, but I only spent 20 hours working on it because I've increased my efficiency, I improved my processes, and so on. So that means that here I would effectively earn $50 per hour. But then you might say that's just not possible because it's my employer who sets the exact amount of hours that I need to work. And that's true. That's the norm, at least for now. But I challenge that to change in the future. And I will be making more videos on this going forward. But for now, there are two options. You have to either become self-employed or a freelancer, or work for a result-oriented employer. If you work with a company and you have the kind of boss who doesn't care when you come to the office, when you leave, how long you sit at your desk, then it is possible that you can effectively earn more per hour by increasing your efficiency. It may still be stated in the contract that the regular working hours are 40 hours, but this kind of employer that I'm talking about doesn't care about how many hours it takes you. He just wants you to get the job done, and I think that's what makes the most sense. And yes, this is the kind of employer that you want. And to all the companies and HR people out there, listen carefully. I also believe that this is the kind of employer who will win the battle for talents in the future. Because people who are highly capable and highly efficient don't want someone else to be regulating how many hours they need to work exactly and at what time they exactly need to come to the office or log into their account and so on. The other way is to become self-employed or a freelancer. In this case, it's really all up to you. If you can increase your productivity, if you can improve your processes and the system that you use to work, then in the end, that will result in a higher effective rate per hour. And now you might say, well, it's not that easy. And you're right, it's not easy at all. But the reason that it's difficult is not because these opportunities don't exist out there, but it's more because we are so used to this kind of mindset of trading our time for money. What most of us do right now is that we supply our time, our precious time, and work our asses off, and in return we get a fixed amount of money. But that, I think, is a very wasteful way to treat time. And again, if you're enjoying what you are doing at the moment, if you like your work arrangement the way it is, then all power to you. But if you feel that you are just spending too much time in your day job right now, and if there are so many other things that you actually want to do, or if you're considering to change careers, then you need to start to actively look out for those kind of opportunities. To work in a job for an employer that is more result-oriented, or to become a freelancer or self-employed. But the good news is that you're not completely alone in this fight, because more and more companies are now realizing that shorter working hours may lead to increased efficiency. And if you want to know more about this, then you might want to check out this other video that I made earlier. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you again soon.